Evelyn Shore had waited her whole life for this moment. Not the wedding, not the dress, not the string quartet echoing off the hotel ballroom walls. No, it was the feeling, the rare, impossible quiet when you finally let yourself believe you're safe. But that's when her phone buzzed. Not a congratulations, not a late RSVP. It was a calendar invite. Subject, HR exit meeting, immediate. She stared at the screen. Her hand, still holding her champagne flute, didn't move. The sender, Madison Trent, VP of Operations, her boss's daughter, the same woman who once asked Evelyn if federal compliance could just be automated with an app. Evelyn didn't cry. She didn't storm out. She turned her phone face down, smiled for the photographer, and leaned into the lie a little longer. But deep down, something cracked. Not her heart, her patience. 17 years, no scandals, no missed audits, no skipped protocols. And they fired her by calendar invite on her wedding day. Before we dive into what happened next, where are you listening from today? And let me ask you this. Have you ever been treated like a replaceable part, even when you were the only thing keeping the machine running? Leave a comment if this story stirs something in you. Because sometimes the most dangerous people in the room are the ones who stay quiet. For most of her career, Evelyn Shore didn't need the spotlight. She didn't chase credit, didn't post wins on LinkedIn. She just showed up every day with her thermos of black coffee and a red pen that never ran dry. At TrainX Systems, she wasn't flashy. She didn't speak louder than necessary. Her office was tucked between the IT bay and the copy room, a windowless space with a humming fluorescent light and a framed certificate that meant more than her title ever did. Level 4 security clearance, issued directly by the Department of Defense, non-transferable. Irreplaceable. Her name was the only one on record for the company's most sensitive defense contract, DEF 43X, and yet nobody asked about it anymore. Not since the new leadership took over. Not since people started caring more about streamlining than surviving an audit. Evelyn's job was to make sure Trinex didn't get banned from doing business with the federal government. She caught mistakes before they became scandals. She knew the audit trail of every subcontractor by heart. She once stopped a $2.4 million shipment because a supplier failed to renew a single export license. But no one cheered for that. No one clapped for the crises that didn't happen. She was a firewall in flats, a walking memory of regulations most people couldn't pronounce. And over the years, people got comfortable. They stopped knocking. They stopped asking. Until one day, a 20-something exec with a sugar detox and a podcast mic waltzed in and decided Evelyn's whole department was non-essential. Still, Evelyn didn't push back. She kept the logs updated, she reviewed the protocols, she fixed the broken links that no one else even saw. But something had changed, not just in the office, in her. Because when people stop seeing you, you start seeing everything. And Evelyn, she was watching. She arrived on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday where the coffee in the break room tasted burnt, the printer jammed for no reason, and the elevator stalled just long enough to make everyone late for the 9 a.m. town hall. Madison Trent walked into the executive wing like she owned the air. Long blazer, flawless makeup, heels clicking on polished floors like punctuation. 27, maybe 28. Fresh off a disruption leadership course and armed with a startup pitch deck and last name that opened doors faster than clearance badges, she was the CEO's daughter. But no one dared say it out loud, not in the office anyway. The announcement came with barely 2 days' notice. New VP of Operations, the email said. No bio, no background, no resume. Just a photo of her smiling like she'd just convinced a venture capitalist to fund her kombucha app. The town hall felt like a press conference no one had agreed to attend. Madison took the stage with a wide grin and a slide deck titled, "Efficiency is the New Growth." Her first slide read, "We spend too much," in 72-point font. No context, no data, just that. Evelyn stood at the back, arms crossed, sipping lukewarm tea. She didn't speak, she didn't react, but she watched. Then came the line. Do we really need a whole department just to manage compliance? Like, isn't there an app for that now? A few people chuckled nervously. Some shifted in their seats. Most avoided eye contact altogether. Evelyn blinked once. That was all. Because she knew that tone. It wasn't curiosity. It was dismissal disguised as innovation. The voice of someone who had never had to explain to a federal agent why a document went missing or why a contractor system had no encryption. After the meeting, Madison walked past Evelyn without a glance. Didn't even register her presence. But Evelyn registered everything. The phrasing, the assumptions, the complete and total lack of understanding. By Friday, 3 departments were restructured. Compliance wasn't on the list. Not yet. But Evelyn had seen enough to know. She was next. It didn't happen all at once. No explosion, no confrontation, just small shifts. Subtle, quiet, and carefully disguised as progress. The first memo came on a Monday, a bright, cheerful email from Madison Trent with far too many exclamation marks. Excited to announce a more agile approach to cross-team collaboration. Attached was a revised workflow chart. Compliance had been moved. No longer a standalone department, now folded under operational support. No one had asked Evelyn. No one had even told her. Then came the dashboards, a new system to track productivity across non-revenue generating teams. Everyone was told to log their hours in 15-minute increments, even Evelyn, even for tasks involving restricted federal systems. She raised a quiet concern. A simple note, some activities fall under clearance-only protocols, cannot be time-tracked. The reply came back in less than a minute. Please log them anyway. Transparency matters. Transparency, Evelyn thought, from people who didn't even know what the acronyms on her door meant. Later that week, she found a new version of the export control checklist uploaded to the shared drive, rewritten by someone in marketing. Entire sections were missing. The definitions were vague. Someone had added emojis. Evelyn printed it out, took a red pen, and bled corrections into the margins. Then she left it on Madison's desk. No note, no explanation, just a single word scribbled in the corner, no. Madison never responded. But 2 days later, HR gently reminded Evelyn to complete a culture alignment survey. And that Friday, her calendar was suddenly filled with back-to-back collaboration syncs, none of which involved her actual work. The hallway chatter shifted. Voices got quieter when she walked by. Team leads stopped looping her in. Her name vanished from certain distribution lists. Still, Evelyn said nothing. She kept showing up, kept doing the job no one else understood. Because systems don't break all at once. They corrode piece by piece until one day they don't turn back on. Late one evening, as she powered down her terminal, Evelyn noticed something. Her name no longer appeared on the clearance renewal schedule. She didn't panic, but she did circle a date on her private wall calendar. 71 days from now. It was the kind of Tuesday no one remembers. Gray skies, stale coffee, fluorescent lights buzzing louder than usual. Evelyn had just finished redlining a procurement clause so riddled with errors it looked like a parody. She was reaching for her tea when her screen blinked. Meeting request, immediate. No subject, no agenda, just 3 words, and a name, from Madison Trent. She didn't ask questions, didn't forward it to her assistant. She stood up, grabbed her tote bag, and walked toward the conference room like someone heading into a storm she'd already seen on the radar. Madison was already seated perfectly poised behind a glass table that somehow made everything feel colder. She didn't invite Evelyn to sit, didn't look up. She just slid a folder across the table with 2 fingers, like it was a takeout menu. We've concluded that your role is no longer aligned with our operational goals, she said, in a tone that tried to sound professional but landed somewhere between fake sympathy and practiced detachment. No thank you. No acknowledgement of 17 years, just a recycled termination letter printed in Comic Sans. Evelyn stared at it, not in disbelief, but in calculation. She didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't even raise an eyebrow. Instead, she asked one question, calm, precise. Who's listed on the cage file for the DF-43X contract? Madison blinked. What's a cage file? Evelyn waited. No answer came. It's how the Department of Defense tracks key compliance personnel, she said quietly. Without a valid record on file, the contract is considered unstaffed. Madison's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Evelyn picked up the letter, folded it once, slid it into her tote. Then she turned to leave. No rush, no dramatics. And as she walked past the glass doors for what should have been the last time, her badge still worked. No escort, no announcement, no idea what they'd just done. But Evelyn knew. She knew exactly what that decision would cost them. And before she left the building entirely, she made one quiet stop just to make sure her name was still active in the federal system. It was. Evelyn didn't pack up her things. She wasn't the type to sweep her desk into a box like in the movies. She didn't even touch the mug she'd used for over a decade, the one with the faded NASA logo and the tiny hairline crack near the rim. Instead, she sat at her desk one last time, opened her drawer, and pulled out a slim black binder. On the spine, neatly labeled in her handwriting, DEF-43X Primary Access Logs. It was heavier than it looked. 12 years' worth of chain of custody forms, audit trail printouts, backup rotation schedules, all signed, time-stamped, bulletproof. She placed it gently into her tote bag. No fanfare, no lingering. Before leaving, she made one more stop, the server room. She didn't touch anything, didn't shut down systems or pull cables. She just stood there, quietly watching the rows of blinking lights, the heartbeat of a compliance infrastructure she'd built from the ground up. She remembered training half the engineers who now avoided her in the hallway. She'd written the disaster recovery protocols herself. The system wasn't just hers. It was her signature, written in silence across every corner of that company. Then, back at her desk, she logged into the Defense Security Service portal, standard protocol. She submitted her separation notice, flagged her clearance as terminated, and closed the tab without ceremony. Trinex wouldn't see the alert. They never checked the real-time dashboard. They assumed the lights would stay on so long as someone was in the chair. As she walked toward the lobby, no one stopped her. No goodbye email, no HR escort, no one even looked up. The elevator ride down was quiet, just the soft hum of machinery and the distant echo of someone laughing in the break room. Outside, the air was cold and clean. She took a breath deeper than she'd had in weeks. She wasn't unemployed. She was unshackled. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't responsible for keeping anyone safe. But she was still watching. And when her phone buzzed 2 mornings later, it wasn't spam. It was a system notification. And it was only the beginning. 2 days passed. Evelyn didn't rush to update her resume. She didn't announce anything on LinkedIn. She didn't even tell her neighbors she'd left Trinex. Instead, she spent her mornings at a diner 3 blocks from home. Vinyl booths, bottomless coffee, a waitress named Marcy who called everyone Hun and never asked questions. Evelyn brought a book but rarely opened it. She just watched people come and go and let her mind rest, or at least try to. But on the 3rd morning, her phone buzzed. Not a message, not an email, a system alert. Subject, clearance deactivation confirmed. Contract, DEF-43X, status suspended. No active clearance holder on file. Action required, immediate. She stared at the screen for a long moment. No music swelled, no adrenaline, just a click of the kettle behind the counter and the scrape of someone's spun in a ceramic bowl. To anyone else, it would have looked like another bureaucratic hiccup. But Evelyn knew better. This wasn't a flag. It was a detonation countdown. Somewhere deep in a federal database, the system had recognized the void she'd left behind and started closing doors. She sipped her coffee steady, didn't text anyone, didn't gloat. But she opened a small notepad from her purse and jotted down the time, 9:13 a.m. Timestamps mattered. because someone eventually was going to pretend they didn't know. And when that happened, Evelyn would have the receipts. Back at Trinex, no one had noticed yet. Not Madison, not the CTO, not the contractors who were still accessing systems tied directly to DF43X. But Evelyn knew it was only a matter of time, because federal protocols don't wait for department memos. They don't need explanations or apologies. They only care about compliance. And when that goes missing, the system responds. Evelyn folded her napkin, left a tip, and walked out into the crisp morning air. She didn't need to lift a finger. Her absence was already working. And as she reached the crosswalk, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't from the system. It was from someone inside. At exactly 9:42 a.m., the phone at Trinex's front desk rang. The receptionist, new and eager, routed the call straight to Madison Trent's office without asking questions. After all, it said government liaison on the caller ID. Sounded official enough. Madison, halfway through a kale smoothie and mid-sentence in a Slack message about team empowerment, picked up with a cheery, distracted voice. Madison here. A pause. Then a voice, calm, slow, unmistakably federal. Hi, this is Agent Carroll with the Defense Contract Management Agency. I'm looking to confirm the current clearance holder for contract DF43X. Madison blinked. Oh, we let her go. She even laughed a little, like it wasn't a big deal, as if she were talking about a barista who forgot to show up for a shift. There was silence on the other end. Then a curt, "Thank you." The line went dead. That's when the countdown truly began. 5 hours later, at 2:17 p.m., keycard access at the Trinex R&D site in Virginia began to fail. Engineers were locked out. Contractors stood in the lobby, confused, phones in hand. IT systems began flagging errors. Users tied to DF43X were being systematically denied access. No explanation, no override, just access denied. Slack went from cat memes to all-caps panic. Did someone change the VPN? Why is our staging environment offline? Why can't I pull anything from the export server? In the executive wing, voices rose. Someone from finance whispered, "Did we forget to replace Evelyn on the clearance file?" No one answered. By 4 p.m., the company dashboard for DF43X turned red. Status suspended. Pending clearance verification. Reason, no valid clearance holder. Immediate halt required. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in her kitchen pouring tea. She read the same update on her own secure channel. No alarm, no panic, just a soft breath and a small checkmark in her notebook. Time of system-wide block, 4:03 p.m. Another timestamp. Trinex didn't just lose access, they lost control. And as the sun dipped behind the skyline, an emergency board meeting was scheduled for the next morning. But before that, 2 men in black suits would pay Madison Trent a visit. The next morning, Trinex headquarters was unusually quiet, not the peaceful kind, the kind that comes right before the sirens. At 9:01 a.m., 2 federal agents stepped off the elevator on the executive floor. Dark suits, government lanyards, no smiles. They walked straight toward the corner office like they'd been there before. Madison Trent, humming off-key and holding a green smoothie, nearly collided with them. "Can I help you?" she asked, flashing a smile that worked on consultants, influencers, and interns, but not on men trained to read deception in the microseconds between words. "Are you Madison Trent?" She nodded. "That's me. We need to speak with your compliance lead, immediately." "I am compliance," she said. They didn't respond, just stared at her long and silent. The kind of silence that makes even confident people start to talk too much. But Madison didn't have the words, because for the first time she realized no one had replaced Evelyn Shore. Downstairs, systems were still locking out users. Field teams were stalled. Contractors were calling. Emails went unanswered. Clients were nervous. In the conference room, the CEO, Harold Trent, stormed in, face flushed. "Who the hell approved this termination?" he barked, looking around like someone was about to raise their hand and apologize. Someone mumbled, Madison had full HR support. I don't care if she had a memo signed by the Pope. Do you realize what's happening? He wasn't asking. He was unraveling. The board demanded answers. Legal teams scrambled. But all roads led back to one person and one signature they no longer had. Evelyn Shore. The woman who had written every compliance protocol, whose name was still hard-coded into the clearance records, whose access had never truly been replaced because no one thought she'd actually leave. They had erased her from the org chart, but she had written the chart. She had trained the systems. She had built the paper trail like a fortress, and now that fortress was rejecting them. In her small apartment across town, Evelyn watered a plant and sipped her tea. Her phone lit up. Text from Kev. They're asking about you. Federal guys. CEO looks like he's aged 10 years overnight. What did you do? Evelyn smiled, not cruelly, just knowingly, and she didn't answer. Not yet. The emails started coming in waves. Not official ones. Those would take days, maybe weeks. These were the quiet messages, the whispered ones. Screenshots from panicked Slack channels, forwarded internal memos. Blurred photos of whiteboards filled with red ink and acronyms no one could decode. Most of them came from people who had never once said her name out loud in a meeting. People who used to walk past her office like she was part of the furniture. Now, suddenly they remembered. Evelyn, are you free to hop on a quick call? Hey, do you remember the vendor verification protocol for DEF 43X? Would love to grab coffee soon. She didn't respond. Instead, she steeped a cup of jasmine tea and settled into the chair by her window, the one with the afternoon light. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was still, like someone who'd finally set down a weight they didn't realize they were carrying. People always expect revenge to be loud, explosive, cinematic. But Evelyn had never been about spectacle. She didn't want them to burn. She just wanted them to feel the silence, the kind she had endured for years. The kind that seeps in when no one's watching, but everything is still working because of you. Now they could feel it, the stillness without her, the absence where there used to be certainty. As the sun dipped lower, her phone buzzed again. This time, not a plea, not a question. A simple message from an old friend, Vanessa Cho, former compliance lead at Halidon Dynamics, Trinex's largest competitor. Coffee, just that. Evelyn let the steam curl around her fingers. Vanessa was sharp, ethical, deadly in audits. They'd survived one of the ugliest federal investigations of the decade together. And if Vanessa was reaching out, it wasn't just for coffee. Evelyn placed her mug down gently. The tea was still worn. So was the opportunity. She stood up slowly with the kind of calm that makes people nervous, because sometimes power doesn't come from swinging back. It comes from knowing you don't have to. The office was sleek, 4th floor, downtown. All glass and sunlight, the kind of place where the potted plants didn't just survive, they thrived. Evelyn stepped in quietly, her heels barely making a sound on the polished concrete. She wasn't nervous, she wasn't eager, she was ready. Across the table sat Damon Chen, Vice President of Strategic Growth at Halidon Dynamics. No small talk, no corporate buzzwords, just a nod and a thin folder already open in front of him. "We're not here to offer you a job," he said. His voice was calm, precise, like someone who already knew her answer. "We're here to offer you authorship." He slid the document across the table. Evelyn glanced at the cover. Position: Senior Advisor, Government Risk and Compliance. Equity heavy, full autonomy, build your own team, report to no one but Damon, and only when necessary. She didn't react. Not yet. He leaned back. "We followed what happened. No judgment, just admiration." A pause. "Trinex tried to erase you. We'd like to give you ink." Evelyn flipped through the pages, not because she didn't trust him, but because she always reads the fine print. Every line was clear. No fluff, no HR filler, just structure, power, trust. But most importantly, terms. Terms she could define. Damon watched her carefully. "We don't want revenge," he added. "We want resilience. And you know how to build it better than anyone." Evelyn closed the folder. "Can I bring my clearance file with me?" she asked. He smiled. "Already cleared with legal. It transfers the moment you sign." She didn't smile back. Not quite. But something in her expression shifted. A quiet understanding that this wasn't a step up. It was a new chapter. Behind her, the skyline shimmered. Somewhere in the distance, the Trinex building sat dark on one floor. Probably the compliance wing. Probably empty. She tapped the folder once gently, like she was sealing a thought. Then she stood. She hadn't signed it. Not yet. Because sometimes knowing the pen is in your hand is already power enough. It happened quietly, like most real endings do. A week after Evelyn reviewed the final terms, Trinex released a public statement. Due to unforeseen compliance complications, Trinex Systems will temporarily suspend all federal contract activities. Unforeseen, that was the word they chose. Behind the scenes, chaos tightened like a noose. Board members resigned. The CEO, Harold Trent, stepped down to focus on family health matters. No one saw Madison again. Her email bounced. Her office emptied overnight. Rumor had it she'd left the city fast. Meanwhile, Evelyn stood in her new office, high above the skyline, watching it all unfold like a slow-motion landslide. No celebration, no glass raised, just quiet clarity. She wasn't anyone's employee now. She was an institution. A cornerstone in a system she once held up alone, now empowered to build something better. Her nameplate read Senior Advisor. Below it sat her new badge. Clearance reinstated, extended. No longer tied to just one contract or one company. A junior analyst knocked softly on her door. "Miss Shore, I have a draft protocol for review." Evelyn turned, smiled. The kind of smile that didn't need to prove anything anymore. "Come in," she said. And just like that, life moved forward. Not with vengeance, but with intention. Because that's the thing about real power. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase applause. It just endures, even when forgotten. Evelyn didn't burn bridges. She let the silence speak for her. And in the end, it said everything. Sometimes the strongest move isn't pushing back. It's walking away, with everything they didn't know you built still in your hands. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated until it was too late? Share your thoughts below. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs.